Before 2025, every military analyst in the world agreed on one thing. Naval drones with ranges under 1,000 kilometers could not threaten shipping across an entire sea. Forward operating bases on foreign continents required permanent military infrastructure, decades of basing agreements, and strategic partnerships that took a generation to build. Expeditionary maritime warfare was the exclusive domain of great powers with blue water navies. All three of those assumptions were wrong, and a country at war with no navy to speak of has just proven it, using an 800-kilometer drone, a base built in under a year, and a strategic agreement signed with a fractured African government. The doctrine of modern warfare has just been rewritten on the Libyan coast. The scale of what Ukraine has achieved in Libya is best understood by starting with the weapon. According to El País, the naval drone used against the Russian LNG carrier Arctic Metagaz carried a payload of up to 300 kilograms of explosives and operated at ranges of approximately 800 kilometers. That range is a specific engineering achievement with specific strategic implications. At 800 kilometers, a single launch platform on the Libyan coast places every major Mediterranean shipping lane within strike distance. The Sicilian Channel, the approaches to Suez, the Eastern Mediterranean corridor toward Port Said. A vessel transiting any of these routes is within reach of a drone launched from a base 50 kilometers north of Tripoli, and the drone does not need air cover, a carrier, or a supporting fleet. It simply needs a launch site and targeting data. Ukraine has both. The launch site sits in Zawiya, roughly 50 kilometers north of the Libyan capital. According to Radio France Internationale, this facility is equipped to launch both aerial and naval drones. It is one of 3 Ukrainian installations in Libya. The second is Libya's Air Force Academy in Misrata, a facility already hosting Italian forces, Turkish forces, a British intelligence center, and elements of U.S. Africa Command. The third is a coastal site still under construction, where Ukrainian personnel have installed antenna systems and runways. The combined architecture is deliberately designed for maritime surveillance and interdiction. Antennas track shipping, runways launch aerial platforms, naval drone facilities close the kill chain. So over 200 Ukrainian military experts and officers operate across these sites under an agreement signed between the governments in Kyiv and Tripoli, with Ukrainian presence confirmed since at least November 2025. The operational record so far is public. On December 19, 2025, Ukraine's security service claimed responsibility for a strike on the Qendil, a shadow fleet tanker sailing under an Omani flag in international waters between Malta and Greece. That strike occurred more than 2,000 kilometers from Ukraine's own borders. Months later, the Arctic Metagaz, carrying 60,000 tons of Russian liquid natural gas, was attacked en route to Port Said. According to Euronews, the crew was evacuated by Maltese authorities. A Libyan towing operation failed when the cable snapped. The Arctic Metagaz continues to drift in the Mediterranean, still loaded with its full cargo, and has become a flashpoint for environmental concerns raised by 9 European Union states, led by Italy and by the World Wildlife Fund. The strikes themselves are significant, but the pattern they establish is more significant still. Quick note: you're watching Defense Wire. If you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time. What Ukraine has assembled in Libya is a complete expeditionary strike complex, the kind of capability that traditionally required an aircraft carrier battle group, years of forward basing, and a diplomatic relationship measured in decades. Ukraine has built it in months. The El País analysis suggests that the personnel operating the system are drawn from the SBU, which fields the Sea Baby naval drone, or from Ukraine's main Directorate of Intelligence, which operates the Magura platform. Both are combat-proven systems. Both have already been used against Russian naval assets in the Black Sea. What is new is not the weapon. It is the platform from which it is now being deployed. But Ukraine's approach is not exceptional. It is the rule of what happens when institutional flexibility meets technological leverage. The broader doctrine on display is not limited to naval warfare. It is the same doctrine that allowed Ukraine to build its three-layered drone architecture on the Eastern Front, to achieve interception rates that gutted Russia's Shahed campaign, and to scale its unmanned systems forces to 11,000 combat missions per day. The Libya operation is the maritime extension of the same principle. Identify a capability gap, build a solution faster than adversaries can adapt, and deploy it before traditional defensive frameworks can respond. Russia's Shadow Fleet, the approximately $87 to $100 billion annual revenue stream documented by the Center for Strategic and International Studies, depends entirely on maritime freedom of movement. Ukraine has now introduced a credible threat to that freedom of movement across an entire sea, using equipment that costs a fraction of any vessel it targets. The strategic implications are already being debated. Writing for the Times of Israel, Amin Ayyub of the Middle East Forum described Ukraine's Libya presence not as an ad hoc improvisation, but as a calculated transformation, the establishment of a forward operating base for what Ayyub characterized as an expanding conflict. And Ayyub argued that Libya's sovereignty is now being treated as negotiable collateral, and that all foreign military influences in the country, Russian, Ukrainian, and Turkish, require a clear United Nations mandate that is not forthcoming. The assessment is analytically precise. The Libya operation has created a new category of military presence, a small, mobile, forward-deployed strike cell operating with host nation permission, but without the traditional infrastructure of an alliance framework. It is faster to establish than a formal base. It is harder to detect than a permanent deployment. And it is politically easier for the host government to disavow if circumstances change. Russia's response confirms that Moscow understands the scale of the problem. On April 8th, a Russian Foreign Ministry spokeswoman, Maria Zakharova, publicly named the Ukrainian unit as Group 13 in statements carried by TASS. Zakharova alleged that the unit operates a dry cargo ship in the Mediterranean and Black Sea, capable of launching maritime drones at any moment. Putin himself characterized the Arctic Metagaz strike as a terrorist attack in state television remarks. Russia's transport ministry raised accusations against the European Union. The rhetorical pattern is familiar, but the underlying reality is not. Russia has lost effective interdiction capability across a major operational theater, and its public response is the closest thing to an acknowledgement that it is unlikely to recover it in the short term. This shift comes at the worst possible moment for Moscow. The Shadow Fleet is not a peripheral asset. It is, according to CSIS, a revenue stream that matches or exceeds the total military aid provided to Ukraine since 2022. Longer routes to avoid the Libyan threat zone create additional wear on aging vessels that are already operating past their service life. Each extended voyage increases exposure to Western sanctioning authorities. Each delayed delivery compounds logistics pressure on Russia's oil and gas customers in Africa and Asia. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky confirmed on April 3rd that Mawand 6's assessment showed the frontline situation as the best for Ukraine in 10 months. But the Libya operation extends that assessment beyond the front. Ukraine is not just winning ground in Donbass. It is removing Russia's strategic options globally. But this is only the surface. Because what this operation reveals about the future of expeditionary warfare will reshape how every medium-sized power calculates its strategic reach for the next generation. The traditional model of projection relied on aircraft carriers, formal alliances, and permanent basing rights. Ukraine has demonstrated an alternative, a model based on agile partnerships, distributed drone platforms, and forward cells that can be established, operated, and disbanded with a fraction of the cost and political weight of legacy deployments. The implications reach far beyond Libya. Any medium-sized power with a functional drone program and a willing host government can now threaten shipping across an entire sea. The barriers to expeditionary maritime strike have collapsed. The question that traditional naval planners cannot answer is the only question that matters. What do you do when an adversary does not need a navy to threaten your ships, does not need an alliance to establish a forward base, and does not need decades to build the capability that once defined great power projection? Ukraine has written the new doctrine in real time on the Libyan coast, using drones that cost less than a single modern torpedo. The Arctic Metagaz is still drifting. The Shadow Fleet is still bleeding. And every analyst watching this operation is revising their assumptions about what a modern military actually requires to fight a global conflict. If you want to see the ground war doctrine that made all of this possible, check out our breakdown of Ukraine's three-layer drone architecture. And if you want to understand how the political fracture inside Libya created the opening for this operation, our proxy war analysis will show you the full picture. Subscribe to DefenseWire so you never miss what comes next.